Can you hear me? Hello? Yes. If I talk like this, is that all right? Okay. All right. Well, it's 12 o'clock. Thank you for being here on this beautiful afternoon. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm super grateful for that. My name is Heather Essex Guy. I'm the Racial Justice Coordinator for the YWCA Northeast Indiana. And this afternoon, we're brought together for our Diversity Dialogue series. I started this position in May, so the series has been in place. Some of you are familiar with it. This topic has also been in place so since before I came, so I was super excited to be able to kind of have my way with this topic. I think for me it was important rather than to have necessarily an academic conversation, a smart people's conversation about thankfulness and diversity in our community. I thought maybe this could be an opportunity for us to practice being with each other in our differences, celebrating our differences, and just kind of learning about the differences that our community embodies. So again, thank you for being here. Today's presentation is Thankfulness and Diversity, Our Community, Our History. Okay, so a part of our rules and our culture here, we have a set of group rules. So to facilitate an open and honest discussion, we abide by these rules at each of our diversity sessions. We ask that you humble yourself in the name of learning. We ask that you are open to new ideas. We ask that you give everyone a chance to speak. One person talks and we can all listen. We ask that in conversation you attack the problem and not the person. And also we ask that you respect the confidentiality of the personal views and stories shared during this experience and in this space. I can return to that in a little bit. So a brief outline just to let you know what we're going to do today. I'm going to share a little bit about the history of cultural diversity in our community. I had the opportunity to do some of my own research regarding Fort Wayne and the surrounding area's history, and kind of be able to see what has brought communities together, different cultural communities together. So I'll talk a little bit about that history here that we share. And then I'm so excited to be able to share this group of creators from our community. I look forward to being able to share their forms of expression. I look forward to them sharing their stories with you and how they are able to come here today and share themselves so wonderfully with us. So we are grateful for that. And that's the second part of our program. Okay, so this is by no means comprehensive. I don't have all the time to be able to go over the history of this particular land that we share. So with that disclaimer, I'm still gonna start at the very beginning. So when I was reading about, well, first let me just share a personal story. I grew up with the ability to play in woods. Where I lived, there was a field of waist-high grass, and then beyond that field, there were woods. And then we would drop down, we called it the Death Hill because it was so steep. And we would drop down, and then it would just open up to forest, and we would roam for hours and hours. So I know Fort Wayne has an association with corn, but for me, Fort Wayne and Indiana, it's the trees that I love. That's how I recognize Fort Wayne as home. So I like to think of the fact that we share this particular neck of the woods on this land and this planet. So that kind of sets the tone for this little history lesson. So at the very beginning, glaciers roamed this land. I love this particular map because it shows the diversity of the actual land that we occupy. We share 3 different types of terrains, right? So the green area up at the top indicates the edge of glacier lake materials. The blue area, that vast kind of middle portion of the state, represents where the land was flattened by the movement of glaciers. And after the glaciers would come and settle, eventually mastodons and bison would roam this land. And I think it's beautiful, personally, for me to know that we live in one of the largest natural wetland and unbroken forest chains on the North American continent. And so that map on the left side kind of shows the diversity of our actual natural land, the geology. And I think it's interesting to see how these different types of land, right? Wetlands, forest, plains, actually we occupy a convergence of these different types of environments and materials. So I just think that's interesting. There's been evidence of human tribes in this area as early as 8,000 BC. Since recorded history, some of the dominant cultures that would come to create the communities in this area were indigenous tribes like the Miami, Potawatomi, the Way, Fox, Chippewa, and Huron tribes. Eventually, European settlers would come to this region in the 1670s and declare this land French territory, establishing this area as a passage from their Canadian Quebec territory all the way through their New Orleans territory. Eventually, I think it's important to note that at the time when the French came, this is also one of the times when it's known that one of the French settlers that came to this land brought with him a black slave. So we have evidence that at least one black person was in this area earlier than 1700s. It's also important to note that the French and the Native Americans, particularly the Miami in this area, encouraged intermarrying and kind of like a collaboration in terms of community. The French did come and establish this as their territory, but they also understood the necessity of like cohabitation and working with other groups of people. So there was a attitude of community, cross-cultural community building still under the circumstances. I think that is important to keep in mind. I'm not sure if you can see it so well. This map has kind of lays out the different territories that the different indigenous tribes occupied in our land. You can see the Potawatomi, the Miami, the Shawnee. And again, on the right, you can see the convergence of the three rivers that would make up Fort Wayne. One of the forts was Kikianga, established, I forget which neighborhood it is, but it's one of the neighborhoods here where you can actually see some of the remains of some Native American cultures, the Miami culture specifically. So like I said, the French and Miami intermarried and lived amongst each other through the mid-1700s. It was prominent that families would mix and mingle and operate their businesses and kind of grow their influence in this area. Hold on one second. Okay. Yes. So after America won its independence from Britain, because of the different cross-cultural communities that occupied this land, one of George Washington's first dispatches as president of the United States, one of his first domestic dispatches, was to send in troops to settle this territory because the people weren't necessarily sympathetic or fans of the American cause, right? So they had established a long kind of cross-cultural relationship with the Native Americans, and the people who occupy this land kind of resented the treatment of the Native Americans. So this area for colonial America right after independence was kind of considered the Wild West. I read quite a bit of stories that involved raids and scalpings. So it became important for George Washington to kind of tame this area. There were two unsuccessful and just basically downright disastrous missions that happened. One of them was called the Battle of St. Clair's Defeat. American soldiers there was a fort and there was about 1,400 of them, about 600, almost 700 of them were killed in a surprise attack, a surprise raid. So after that defeat and another defeat, George Washington sent in General Anthony Wayne. So basically, Anthony Wayne was dispatched to unleash what the texts describe as a systematic destruction of forts and villages of this area, which culminated in the Treaty of Greenville of 1795. That is where 12 tribes that previously occupied and fought for this land ceded to the American government. And with that, I want to take a moment to pause and acknowledge the sacrifice of our indigenous ancestors who occupied this land before us, who under the circumstances had to give up their land that we would eventually come to live together. So I would like to actually just take a moment of silence. Okay, so as we are moving from the late 1700s, as we move into 1800s, Indiana became a state December 11th, 1816. As a part of the state's constitution, the most popular article that was voted on from the citizens was Article 13, which required a $500 deposit for any free Black American who settled in the area. So in my research, it became apparent that while a lot of Hoosiers did not necessarily support the institution of slavery, they also were kind of weary about having free Black neighbors. So at the time that Indiana became the 19th state, again, it was considered the western frontier. So European immigrants were attracted to this area because of the fertile lands and the return of cheap labor. So if they decided to be farm hands, if they decided to work in the growing industrial kind of spaces, and then also German, Irish, and French laborers were also used to kind of work the canals and waterways, which are a natural part of the landscape here. So they would use that in terms of shipping and things like that. The rivers were super useful at the time. So it attracted a lot of immigrants to this area. I also like to share this map here is from this text called The Geography of Resistance, Free Black Communities and the Underground Railroad. This, it's written by Cheryl Jennifer LaRoche. This map here actually shows some really awesome activity in terms of how the free Black communities of Indiana were instrumental in helping others escape to freedom. So you can see a lot of activity in the southern eastern portion of Indiana. If you follow up, you can see that there's a stop on the Fort Wayne Underground Railroad. But also this map includes different maps of where there were free Black American settlements, which I think is a history that we as Hoosiers should be a little bit more open in claiming. I was actually shocked at the number and the names of the free Black settlements that were in just our area alone. So that includes the Roberts Settlement in Hamilton County, the Hugart Settlement in St. Joseph County, Weaver Settlement in Grant County, and the Jeffries Free Settlement in Whitley County near the Eel River. I did not know that we had such great history so close to us, and I think that if we are choosing to go forward in the manner of allyship and community building, I think that this might be a history that would be useful for us to share with each other before we lose it. And it actually, it does better sharing it in the surface than it does being hidden away from everyone. So I encourage us to tap into looking into more of our history. For example, most of us have heard of the text Uncle Tom's Cabin, written by Harriet Beecher Stowe. I did not know that her brother was a Presbyterian preacher here. So he is also instrumental and suspected of aiding free slaves through freedom in the Underground Railroad stop that was here. Some other interesting history in terms of Fort Wayne and its sentiments. There was at least one Fort Wayne newspaper that was an abolitionist newspaper called the Fort Wayne Standard. That was provided by a Baptist preacher. And then there was a Methodist preacher who turned into a congressman who was openly abolitionist and fought and encouraged for Black Americans to be free. So, and in that time, he was able to run successfully and represent this area in Congress, even though he was known to be of the freedom mindset. So for me, when I think about Fort Wayne's growth from just being an outpost to an actual city or the urban growth, I think about the fact that this city actually held people who had inclusive mindsets. I know larger history might tell us that we were segregated, but our history tells us that there are people in our community who all along fought for inclusivity in terms of cross-cultural collaboration. So for me as a Black American and as a Black Hoosier, I think it is definitely symbolic of the type of growth that happened at the time. So I think it's important to share that. Another example of the mentality and kind of growth that happened in our city was the Fort Wayne Colored Giants Negro baseball team. I have had the privilege of working at the African American Historical Society Museum and came across this picture, but I did not necessarily know the history. I just think it's such a beautiful kind of still to capture of Black faces at that time. And so this project has helped me kind of discover a little bit of the history. So as it says there, Indiana had over 35 colored baseball teams in the early 20th century. From 1907 to 1949, which is a kind of a long time and definitely spans different eras, the Fort Wayne Colored Giants were the only Black team to represent Fort Wayne. To the extent that local newspapers advertise for recruitment, competitions, game schedules, and scores. So I'm not necessarily into baseball, but it's also great to see this kind of history in our city, that it was vibrant and active. It called people, hey, come play baseball for us. And I'm sure there was a mix of racial attitudes and sentiments and treatments, but I think it does reflect largely that if local newspapers were advertising for people to come into the community, I think that indicates something. Let me find, okay, so. As we talk about the growth of Fort Wayne and we talk about different cultural communities living together, I also was able to look into the Latino Hispanic history of Fort Wayne, and also interesting. So basically, the proliferation of steel mills in Indiana drew the first Latino immigrants to this region. Living conditions in larger urban centers were far worse, so some Latino workers made their way to this region. So Chicago, Gary, the living conditions in those areas encouraged some people to seek Fort Wayne and Allen County. Like, we can still get good jobs, it's just a different pace of life. Mexican workers were used during the steel mill strikes. They helped cement the resentment towards the presence of Mexican, Puerto Ricans, and Cubans because they broke up strikes. So there was resentment there. However, their presence in factory production during both world wars helped sustain a lot of companies in the region, which I think is fascinating. In 1914, the first two names of Latinos appeared in the register in Fort Wayne directory. One's name was Alexander Gonzalez, and the other was Alberlado Z. Hernandez, both thought to be Cuban. Hernandez was a pharmacist who died in a motorbike accident at the age of 22. His obituary was published, and that's how I was able to get that bit. There is a record of the first Latino physician here down to his address where he lived. He was from Puerto Rico. Dr. Juan Rodriguez was from Puerto Rico, and he would become the first recorded Latino homeowner in the city. And on the screen, there is Frank Avila and Gloria Rodriguez. Both were the first Latino high school graduates in Fort Wayne. They both graduated from Central Catholic High. Frank's nickname was Pancho. He graduated in 1943. He played varsity football all 4 years. He was an orator, and he was a participant in the drama club and the Spanish club. And he had a family that also, he was the first in his family to graduate, but apparently academics were very important for his family. And then we have Gloria Rodriguez, the first female Latina to graduate in Fort Wayne. She graduated from Central Catholic High. It didn't really give any details about her, except that somehow her residence was with Dr. Juan Rodriguez. She wasn't thought to be his daughter, but they had the same addresses here in Fort Wayne. And again, I just think it's so beautiful to see those faces from another time, because it reminds us that differences are normal and present, and like we just need to be reminded of it. So there's also Isabel Alvarez. She was Cuban born. And an interesting bit, she was a part of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, and I did not realize that when it comes to truly integrating professional baseball, it was Isabel Alvarez and a group of Cuban women who actually were the first to integrate professional baseball, albeit women's baseball league. And so Fort Wayne is a part of that history. One season, Isabel was transferred in the middle of a season to the Fort Wayne team. She went home to Cuba for the summer, and she wasn't sure she wanted to return, but her mom was like, "You're gonna do this." She returned, she did well. She decided to live here in Fort Wayne. She retired from GE, and she recently passed away, I do believe, in like the last 2 years. So she decided to stay here in Fort Wayne. And I think, again, what a beautiful legacy for us to have. Another story. I think for me, one of my first moments of understanding people from different cultures, I grew up in an apartment complex. So about 98, 99, our neighbors were a Burmese family. So that was the first time that I was exposed to that difference. I did not know what Burmese was. So we didn't talk, but my little sister, her room was walled next to their apartment. So she would just, at night when it's like time to go to bed and stuff like that, she would just tap, 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 and then they would tap, tap, tap. And then they would, eventually my sister and the kids were friends and things like that. So that is my introduction to Burmese people and Burmese culture. I think we all are aware that the Burmese population represents a significant portion of refugees in our family, or in our region. The History Center, a great resource, by the way, shared with me that the first recorded Burmese refugee here, his name was Chan A. Sorry. He had been here in the late 80s, so even before the United States started processing Burmese refugees at large, he had already made his way to Fort Wayne. He was able to do that by working with South Wayne Baptist, First Presbyterian, Trinity United Methodist, Beacon Heights, the Church of the Brethren, Trinity Episcopal, and the Fort Wayne chapter of Catholic Charities. Some of the first Burmese people to arrive here were male students and former military officials. There are over 110 ethnic groups represented here in Fort Wayne alone. Did not know that. I think that is actually beautiful for our community to be able to open up in that sense. Other groups that have sought asylum in our area includes people, Vietnamese people, Laotians, Bosnians, and more recently, Syrian, Afghan, and Congolese people. And that is a legacy of being open to other cultures, people in need, right? I did not necessarily understand what it meant to be a refugee until learning about the Burmese people and what brought them here. And I've gone on to learn about refugees in other capacities, but I think it's actually beautiful that Fort Wayne has made it a practice of opening its heart and its space to other people. And that's, again, something we should cling to. Okay, so this name, I think if you're from Fort Wayne, you're familiar with the name Roland. I did not know necessarily the legacy or history of Ian and his wife. But this opportunity to look at local history was very interesting. So just a little bit about my understanding. Ian Rowland came in to work at Lincoln Life Corporation, which has also interesting history. Apparently, Fort Wayne city officials prior to Lincoln Life being here were seeking corporations to come and base their operations out of Fort Wayne. And they say, hey, we have a great population of workers. They would highlight the different white European immigrants in the working population and say, look at all this workforce that we have here. Lincoln Life was one of the few corporations who disregarded that sentiment and actively sought a diverse workforce. And that is a part of their legacy to this day. Ian Rowland is also responsible for the Lincoln collection, obviously, in the library. There's a whole thing named after him. And the Lincoln exhibit and collection is so extensive, it's a great legacy, but that's not necessarily the legacy that I wanted to share with you. So one of the things that struck me as super interesting about some of the things and the impacts that Ian Rowland made was after Central High School was shut down, it created the need for communities to go to different high schools in different places. And once desegregation became the law of the land, Fort Wayne Community Schools was still having a difficult time trying to implement what it means to desegregate the community, the schools. As a result, I did not know this, but freedom schools for the Black community here were created as a part of like trying to iron out the tensions that were happening with the public school systems. So one of the things that happened was that Ian Rowland gathered a group of community members from different cultures and created this kind of coalition called Parents for Quality Education and Integration in 1986. So that's already at least one generation after desegregation in American history. So in 1986, the PQEI group with Ian Rowland sued Fort Wayne Community Schools to create measures to implement better diversity within the classroom context. The state settled with the group for a settlement of over $12.9 million over a period of 6 years to fund programs for low-income and minority children. It took 35 years to bring a more racial balance to Fort Wayne Community Schools and its programs. And if I'm not mistaken, I do believe that fund ran out like in 2000. So I just think that's an interesting historical context for us to think about. Desegregation was supposed to happen in the late 50s and the 60s, and it took that long for us to actually actively attempt to kind of implement a more realistic racial balance in our community. So yes, and lastly, I want to talk about the YWCA because I work here. I think the reach of the YWCA locally and nationally cannot be underestimated. Fort Wayne's local chapter of YWCA was established in 1894 by 3 women, Agnes Hamilton, Minnie Moon, and Rena Nelson. And they provided the first cafeteria for working women in the city and a safe house for single women. Fort Wayne our YWCA Northeast Indiana has hosted suffragette speakers, so women rights speakers, and it was also brought to my attention that at some point they hosted W.E.B. Du Bois here. In the 1960s, the YWCA hosted one of the first community Black history courses in support of the national YWCA's one imperative to thrust our collective power toward the elimination of racism wherever it exists and by any means necessary. In April 1976, Fort Wayne YWCA opened a domestic violence shelter in response to a study that named domestic violence a community-wide problem. And I did some math, and it looks like next year will be 130 years for the YWCA to be in the Fort Wayne community. So cheers to that. So all of this to say these few things. Indiana's motto is that we're the crossroads of America. I think that lets us know that there's always going to be traffic, right? Crossroads don't stop. It's my personal belief that the world is round and humans have always moved. So people moving around should not be a weird thing. How we get here does not necessarily matter. I think what matters is what we do with each other when we're together. My personal motto is that manners are free and everyone can afford them. I think that should dictate how we operate with each other. And with that, I think the true promise of diversity and democracy is the commitment to do and be better for each other. Democracy is an ongoing process, and it can be an ongoing promise if we let it. I hope that today I was able to share with you this sentiment, that if we look for it, stories of collaborative cross-cultural community building has always been a part of this very specific piece of land that we occupy together. And I think that's something that we should claim and cling to and share before we lose it. It is in the dirt that we share. We share the same potatoes and the same milk and the same corn. We share the same seasons. We share the same love of sports teams. We share the same Midwestern niceness with each other. We have so much more in common if we just really look for it, if we choose to look for it. So again, thank you for being here. That's my little history lesson. Thank you. All right. So before we move on to our next, just a couple little household announcements. I have revamped our Diversity One program. It is a free program. It's about 2 hours. I can just come and share it with you, or I can kind of create it to your needs for whatever industry you're in. Please reach out to my email. You can use that QR code. If your group, if your church, wherever you are, would like to have this conversation about understanding how to navigate diversity, please reach out. As we are developing next year's racial justice program, I'm really going to be emphasizing the role of allyship in our community. We need to understand what that means and how we can practice that. So yes, there's that. I am also super happy to announce that I have developed a set of workshops. There's 4 workshops in all. And I am looking for a soft launch to share those workshops with the community. There's 4 total workshops. So for this soft launch, it'll be a Friday evening and a Saturday morning. You must be able to attend both sessions. There's 4 workshops in total. They will be held at the Unitarian Universalist Church, and the dates will be Friday, December 1st, and Saturday, December 12th. It is limited. What did I say? My bad. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. December 2nd. Yes, so spots are limited, so make sure you're available for both. We're not asking for a fee to participate in this, but we are asking for feedback and for you to share with others that we have this program, your experience of the program, so we can kind of get it out and get it circulating in our community. The CARE workshops stand for Cultivating Allyship and Racial Equity. And it is an opportunity for us to self-reflect at an individual level and kind of look at how our racial understandings might kind of go from individual to systemic and institutional levels. So there's another coffee and conversation. I am more than my yesterday, changing the world one message at a time. That will take place Wednesday, December 13th at 8 o'clock in the morning at the Ash Brokerage site. I'm sorry? It's one of these ones. It's one of these ones. Sorry, can't get more specific than that. But if you register. Oh, okay. And also, if you want to sign up, I'm sure the information is there as a part of the sign up. And the YWCA Northeast Indiana does have openings available if you are interested in getting your foot in the door to work with people who are on a mission. So you can use that little QR code to see what positions are available. And yeah, if you're mission-minded, people-minded, YWCA is a great spot for you. Also, if you're in the mood to donate to support our work, you can snap that little QR code and donate at your ability. The work will go to communities in need, so we appreciate you. All right, so if you have any questions, comments, or concerns regarding a racial justice program, or if you just want to reach out to me, see what we can do together, that's my contact information. It's hessex@ywcaerew.org. Phew. All right, so now it's time I get to share some of our fellow Fort Waynians with you. I'm so excited. I just want to say this. When I wanted to do something, I thought, let's get different people together and do art and expression because that's just the kind of stuff that I love. I like getting people together and mingling and seeing what happens. It wasn't that easy. I'll just say that. There were some people who were not able to work because it's Thursday in the middle of the day. So I understand that. And then there are some people who just didn't necessarily reach back out to me. But never mind them, because we're here. And I'm thankful. I am so thankful for the artists and creators who are here with me today, because they did not have to take a chance on this thing. They're not getting paid to be here. It's in the middle of a workday. And with the exception of one of them, they didn't know me. I'm just somebody who popped into their Facebook message and was like, hey, can you do this thing? So that is why I'm so grateful that they are brave enough to not only do what they do, but to do this with me. So thank you in advance. So the first person that I would like to share with you is Soteria. She was the first person to say yes to me. So she has a gift to share with us. So I invite her to come and share.
Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing? Great. My name is Soteria White, artistically known as Poetic Truthz. I am a spoken word artist. Does anybody know what a spoken word artist is? Anybody familiar with that term? Okay. For those of you that don't know what a spoken word artist is, I'm a poet, but instead of me writing my poems down in a book or magazine or something to that effect, I'm a performer. I like to perform. I love theater, expression, just to get it out. That's my passion. That is what I do. And as my stage name explains, I speak my truths poetically. So that's why my name is Poetic Truthz. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Got it. Yep. I will actually tell you guys my introductory poem because it's my introductory to me. So, I am a lady, but I spit. I spit with a force that'll split bricks, leaving them forgotten like resolved conflicts. But I don't fix the mix of split bricks because I know no tricks that'll dismiss the truth. The language in my poetry is not meant for the youth. Now I said I was a lady and I spit. If allowed, I'd like to tell you this. What's up? My name is Soteria. No disrespect, but when I'm talking, this is my area. Trying to spread positive vibes in a world full of hysteria. I'm trying to open your mind and make you realize things that'll make you say, hey, I learned something today. Now pay attention and appreciate the way I manipulate the English language. How I channel my anguish into something beautiful. And if I happen to increase my tempo with simpo to follow, my mind often drifts, so they call it continental. Not the morning meal, but my sex appeal will make you feel good. I'm a sweetheart with an attitude you might consider hood. So sit back and marvel at the fact that no matter the situation, I can tap into your mental as life bleeds out of my pencil. So as I walk off this stage, watch your gaze because it won't only be on my hips, but my scarlet fingertips as they drip on the floor. Tonight I want to explore my love, or this thing you call poetry. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Well, thank you so much. That takes bravery. I write poetry. I wasn't a poet, slam poet like that. Sorry. Thank you so much. Next, we have Adilene. She is coming to share a little bit of her culture and her crafts with us.
Hi, I'm extremely nervous. All right. My name is Adilene Dyer, and I'd like to give you a little background of my Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos. Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, is a 2-day holiday full of joy, celebrating loved ones who have died, passed away. People in Mexico celebrate Dia de los Muertos. So do other parts of Central America and South America. Mexican Americans also celebrate it too. All have their distinct ways of celebrating and welcoming back their loved ones. Some not as colorful as the Mexican version, but still a spiritual time for families to get together and reflect. Tradition and customs vary per country. Even in Mexico, Day of the Dead tends to be celebrated more in Central Mexico and Southern Mexico. Mexico is colorful. The people, the food, the celebrations are bright and loud. When it comes to death, in true Mexican style, Mexicans celebrate with color, food, and music. Day of the Dead is a 2-day celebration where it is believed that the passage between the real world and the spirit world is open so our deceased loved ones can come back and visit us. Families make their favorite meals, create altars, dance, rejoice, before they head back to the underworld for another year. Dia de los Muertos is celebrated on November 1st and November 2nd. November 1st celebrates the children who have passed. It's called Dia de los Angelitos, Day of the Little Angels. And November 2nd is the adults' turn to come to the festivities. Aztec people once lived in Mexico. They held a festival to celebrate the dead that lasted a whole month. Spanish people arrived in the 1500s, and the Spaniards were shocked at this festival. The Spaniards saw death as an end of life, and that it was a time to be gloom. The Aztecs had a different view. Death to them was part of the circle of life. The Aztecs honored the goddess Mictacasiwa at their festival. She was called Lady of the Dead and was believed by the Aztecs ruler of the underworld. It is said that she watches over the bones of the dead and swallows the stars during the day. The church rejected the Aztecs' beliefs and instead turned it into an All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day, making it on 2 days to fall into the Catholic calendar. Dia de los Muertos is very close to Halloween. Halloween treats death as scary. It's sometimes confused with the symbolic skulls, but it's not related at all. Dia de los Muertos is a happy time. It celebrates a loved one's life and laughs at death. Today, customs have been morphed over the years to become the distinct traditions it is now. Flowers, altars, food, and music are all part of the holiday. There is no sadness, no grieving. This is a lively get-together, honoring the deceased to celebrate life and enjoy all the human things again. The traditions surrounding the Day of the Dead are rich with culture influence into true Mexican style. They don't lack color and substance. Altars, ofrendas, are set up, decorated beautifully in their homes, and place photos of the loved ones they have lost. Along with other items, ofrendas usually consist of water, their favorite foods, drink, flowers, bread, and other things that celebrates the dead person's life. Marigolds are known as the flowers of the dead. Marigolds are used by being placed on the altar and on the burial sites. The marigold flower is thought to guide the spirits back with their intense color and strong, sweet smell. Skulls are a huge part of Day of the Dead. In the Aztec times, they were used during rituals and passed on as trophies during battles. Today, small decorated sugar skulls are placed on the altars. La Catarina has become one of the biggest symbols of Day of the Dead. I got a little picture right here. In the 19th century, cartoonist and social activist Jose Guadalupe Posada drew La Catarina to protest the Mexican people's desire to look European. Papel picado, one of these little babies, perforated paper is colorful paper that is hung above the altar, and some put them out in the streets. Ofrendas showcase fire, water, earth, and air. This represents air. There are special foods for Dia de los Muertos that are shared with families, neighbors, strangers, and the visiting spirits. Pan de Muerto, Day of the Dead bread, is usually a round loaf. It is an essential part of the festivities. They are also placed on the altars. Sugar skulls are a sweet treat enjoyed by the young and old. Mole, tamales, pozole, and sopa azteca. How can you celebrate? You can definitely celebrate respectfully by understanding the customs and honoring the traditions for what it is. Day of the Dead is no small event. It has been celebrated for centuries. It's a beautiful holiday to honor and remember our loved ones who are no longer here. A little of my background. My grandparents and parents are from Guanajuato, Mexico, in a town called San Felipe. I was born in Warsaw, Indiana, and moved to Fort Wayne in 2008. My hometown's Milford, Indiana, small little corn town. Fort Wayne, for me personally, it was a culture shock. In Milford, there wasn't much diversity. So Fort Wayne, for me, allowed me to be more open-minded in all departments of my life. Art in Fort Wayne, I think, is quite incredible. Never did I think art would be displayed on a city building downtown. The farmer market is a wonderful chance to see all types of artists. The way I got into my art of jewelry started off with my daughter, Penelope. She doesn't have her ears pierced, she's so scared. So because she doesn't have her ears pierced, I then decided to start making my own jewelry, clip-ons. And then the love of Dia de los Muertos came, and I wanted to try to make something relating to that. I personally have learned a lot about Dia de los Muertos. You can see in my art how vibrant the colors I choose to do and display, and I really like death. I think it's just so unique. I really encourage you to explore your own culture heritage. We all can learn and share from each other. Thank you.
That was a great history lesson. I did not know so much. And thank you for sharing with us how to celebrate respectfully. That's a really great aspect. Okay, so the next artist, Fort Wayne has a great event called the Art Crawl. I don't know if you do this, fall time. It's a really great opportunity to get out in our community and see what's happening. So I went to this year's Art Crawl, and I'm gonna share this. I don't know if I shared this with you, but I was on the verge of saying, I don't think I can do this diversity dialogue. And then Diane sent me a text and was like, hey, didn't you say something about a thing? And I was just like, hallelujah. So I was literally like on my phone, like, I don't know if I can do this. And I got a text and it was like, hey, I'm reaching out. And I was so grateful because I, at that point, had been super rejected. So I'm so grateful that you came and shared with us, sorry. You said what? And so I am grateful that she shares. She's from Fort Wayne. When I saw her art and talked to her, I was like, you have to be from somewhere else. And she was like, nope, Fort Wayne. So I just think that Fort Wayne, we produce amazing people, and I'm super excited to share Diane. She is one of those amazing people.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Diane Young. After those great speeches there, I'm like, I got to go after that. Man, what y'all thinking? I don't know. Because I wrote a whole bunch of stuff down, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to say none of that now. I really don't. I don't. So, but I'll go with some of this, and then I'm going to leave where my heart is telling me to go. I'm a self-taught artist. I deal with abstract and mixed media, and lately I've went with this fabric thing, and I'm just really in love with it, where I've been manipulating fabrics and turning them into art pieces. So that's where I'm doing right now. You can see some of those over there later. But after what she said, it made me go somewhere in my mind while I was sitting there, because I love the fact that I went to one of the, with my granddaughter, this was last year, I went to the art museum, and I got to see Day of the Dead. I never knew about what it was. And when she brought it back up to me, it really made me, because I was interested when I seen it. I was like, oh my God, that is so neat. I'm one of those people who have lost a lot of people in my life. Even at a young age, I lost my mom at 19. But, so I was interested because I always wanted to be the person in the family that shared losing loved ones in a specific but beautiful way. And that really struck me. So I was thinking about it. I was like, I want to do something like that, but I never knew. And she brought it back to me today. And I'm really interested in learning even more about it. But I grew up on the south side of Fort Wayne. I've been there all my life. I've never ventured to nowhere else, but maybe going to some bigger cities. And Hawaii was my biggest one. For a wedding, my cousin sitting right over there, went with her sister, got married in Hawaii. I went there one time, and it was beautiful. But the other thing was, I grew up on Pontiac and Leaf Street, and my next door neighbor was a Mexican lady, and she wanted me to babysit for her. And I used to babysit her kids for her, and her name was Gloria Perez. And she was like, I always called her my second mom, because she was such a neat woman. She's still there. I always say I'm gonna go visit her. I really have to. But she taught me some Spanish. I don't remember any of it now. I wish I did, but I can say just a few little words and that's it. But so as an artist, I think just all those different things that I've got a chance to see and share and understand different things of other people. I never knew until I started exploring color and doing art on my own. It's just that the world is diverse, and it's diversity everywhere. And I mean, everything we do around us, we're constantly doing something diversity. And I mean, it's beautiful just to be able to see all these different things around us and share with others and learn others and get to know others. I've always been that person where me and my husband will go to different cities and people will just come up to us and they want to talk to us. And we're like, why are they always coming to us? Why are they always? I mean, on our honeymoon, we went to Florida, and everybody, we didn't have a way to get over to the other island. We wanted to go. And the people just came and was like, hey, they're with us. And I was like, we don't even know these people. Why are they picking us? It's like, no, they're with us. I mean, stuff like that happens to us all the time. And we're constantly looking at each other like, why us? But that's what happens when you have that sharing attitude. You have that spirit to show yourself, and people are drawn to you. So I hope you continue to do that with others. That's what I've learned as an artist. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that and your light. I think strangers talking to you definitely indicates that you have a good presence because they're comfortable. So, and then speaking of strangers talking to you, the next artist is Marco. So I was looking online at different art groups, and then I came across some photography of Fort Wayne, and I was like, great angles, like, okay, capture the fort. So I was able to contact Marco, and he was like, yes, I will meet you, stranger. And then come to find out, he's not even from Fort Wayne. I was like, okay. So again, even though he is new to our community, I think, again, welcoming such a spirit, someone who's brave enough to leave where they're from and share their art with us, is commendable. So with that being said, I'd like to welcome Marco.
Hello. I'm a bit nervous, so bear with me. So I go by the name of Margon on the internet, and yes, I'm not from Fort Wayne, originally. I moved up here like 3 years ago. So I see Fort Wayne like a little cornfield city. So, but whenever I moved up here, town I came from is a super small town. So I first landed in Kendallville, which wasn't much of a difference. So it was like just moving to a different state, but same town. So like the same thing for traveling, like how she said, I believe that people should travel more to other different cities to get more familiar with their culture, because whenever I first came over here, I had no idea what pop was. I was like, what is pop? Like, can I get pop? I'm like, what is that? Like, so I was like, oh, it's a soda. Like, okay. So I was like, okay, cool. So what really encourages me to travel was whenever I first traveled to Nashville all by myself when I was, I believe, 19. I went to go see a concert, one of my favorite singers, Lana Del Rey, and I was fortunate to meet her. I met her like 3 in the morning, stayed out there to meet her. She finally came out after the concert. But when that happened, I was like, okay, like if I can do this, like what else can happen? So I finally saved up enough money to buy a camera, like when I was younger, and then I decided to experiment more and more on photos, and finally got recognized by Canon. If you guys don't know Canon, I mean, this is famous, yeah. So I was really encouraged by that. So after that, I just started to travel more to different cities. I've been to LA, Chicago, Toronto, where else? Florida. I've been so many places, like I can't keep up. But as you see other different cities, you understand that not everybody lives the same way. So I feel like people should travel more, experience, and as a Mexican American, I believe that we often forget that we have the privilege to go travel to other cities, or if not other countries, and experience their culture. So, and then like Heather said, I feel like whenever she first like contacted me, I thought she was a scammer. So as an artist, I was like, hopefully she doesn't steal my photos or. So yeah. So my advice for young artists is to just put yourself out there. You never know who's gonna contact you. You know, hopefully not a scammer. So. But yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for sharing that. I wasn't gonna go all the way in there, but that's fine. It reminds me of a sentiment someone shared with me. This person just packed up and went to Italy for like a year and a half, and he was like, as long as my feet were on the ground, I could get to some food, I can get to a restroom, and I was okay. And that type of bravery has actually influenced me to take brave steps. So again, I applaud your bravery for coming to a new place and being willing to share at a new place. Marco also has work at which coffee shop? Old Crown Coffee Shop. He has some photography up there also. So, okay. Speaking of community, the next person I want to bring up is someone I've known, I want to say all my life, but our mothers were friends in high school. So even before my life, we grew up together in a neighborhood together. And basically at this point in the tradition of Black folks, she's my cousin. That's how we call each other. And even if she wasn't my cousin, it's such a pleasure to know this person because she is not boring. That's the best way I can put that. She's an expressive person. She's involved. She has a great community around her. I totally admire and respect the kind of like, I want to say legacy she's kind of created for herself. She is definitely an influencer in our community, and it is my pleasure to introduce my cousin, Kenya.
Hey y'all. So that's me in the third picture. Heather refers to me as a Renaissance woman, and I appreciate that. The reason for that is because I literally do everything. My grandmother was very big on education, and not just necessarily school, but just learning new things. And excuse me, because I do a million things, but public speaking is not one of them. So I just have always lived with that in the back of my mind all the time. And something happened when I began to hit 40. And I really just started to not care about opinions and any of that stuff. Listen, and I ran into an older gentleman that told me if I don't care at 40, I'm really not gonna care at 60. I literally cannot wait to get there. I cannot wait to not care anymore. I DJ, I host private parties for karaoke, I play around with photography. Nothing like that, but I do a lot of things. I host parties. I am a licensed esthetician. I run my own business. So these things have allowed me to come across in me. Oh, I'm sorry. If you do not know what an esthetician is, I specialize in skincare, body waxing, massage, things like that. Sorry, I know that's a weird word, but it has given me the ability to connect with a lot of people that I normally would not be able to connect with. And so my little tidbit would be just go for it. Whatever you want to do, just go for it. I don't even want to get into some of the stuff that I have attempted to learn, but it's been a lot. I mean, people literally are like, you do everything. And I do because I enjoy it. I don't want to sit down. I don't, I believe in being active, continuing to learn, meeting new people, and it has expanded my what's that connection with so many different people. So I just say you're never too old to learn something new, try something new. If you have the idea, go for it. Like people that know me, you cannot come to me with an idea because I'm gonna be like, do it. Like, why not? Just do it. So yeah, that's my little tidbit. Just live your life, be happy, and don't care.
Hi, I'm back. Once again, I'm Poetic Truthz. I just wanted to share another poem with you guys, if that's okay. I do like to ask for permission. Can I share another poem with you guys? Yes. Awesome. I did forget to say I'm a Fort Wayne native myself. Born and raised here. I'm 28. I've been writing since I was 10, performing since I was 13, and you cannot get me to stop to save my life. So, and will not. So another reason that I really do love just performing is self-expression is very important to me. Just being an artist, I feel like you can talk about how happy you are, how sad you are, and there's so many different people in this world, but it's crazy because when you open up your ears to listen, we have so many similarities, and that in itself is beautiful as well. So, I just want to share this poem. It's kind of it's called Uneasy, just because we've all been there before. So I do want to share that with you guys. So this poem is called Uneasy. I like to personify my emotions because sometimes it can be hard to get over a feeling, but it's easy to like push away a person or like ignore a person. So maybe if you have a hard time just getting over something, try making it into a human and then it might work out for you. It works for me. So this poem is called Uneasy. My name is anxiety. I exist because society would rather live in a world full of panic. Often manic, I hide in destruction and deny that I planned it. I'll kill your joy, but don't label me a bandit. I open deep wounds and don't offer a bandage. I love when you're frantic. You can't stand it, but you sit with me on a daily basis. Your life is mapped out, yet I dictate the places. What should be easy street, I transform to mazes. I twist smiling faces, now everyone is anxious. You're anxious. I watch sweat creep from your pores. I smell marijuana, smoke seeps out your doors. You'll never get high because your lows I adore. I turn your passions into chore, and everything you do is a bore. Oh yeah, and everyone is watching you. Thank you.
Can we give another round of applause to our artists and our creators? So thankful for you. So at this time, we are going to say bye to our online friends. We're going to open it up. I have some little snacks, little trail mix over there if you'd like. I'm asking everyone before you leave to maybe sign a slip of paper, something that you're grateful for, something, share your gratitude with the universe. Tuck it in there and I will take care of that for you, make sure that the universe receives.